So 42,000 hectares ravaged by the flames and 220,000 people forced to flee. That as temperatures are set to climb once again later to around 40 degrees in the west of France as a fourth heatwave is set to sweep into the region. Firefighters battling to contain the worst wildfires in living memory ahead of the latest temperature uptick. Well, reporter Carys Garland is following some of the firefighters. She joins us now. Carys, first of all, where do we stand then with the fire amid, of course, that heatwave on its way?
Well, the firefighters have brought us out here to an area where they've been working over the past few days, notably on things like creating fire breaks. That's something that has really been the focus over the last 24 hours or so after firefighters were able to maintain a kind of stable situation with the blaze. It hasn't burned any more surface area than was previously announced, so we're still at a massive 42,000 hectares. Now, these fire breaks have been crucial thanks to the work of the military, but also the Defence Forest Association here. Now, as I said, as you mentioned, the goal this Tuesday is to gain the upper hand as much as possible in light of these higher temperatures that are expected as of this Tuesday, up to 35 degrees Celsius expected before hitting closer to 40 on Wednesday. The firefighter spokesperson that I spoke to earlier said that this could really complicate efforts, and especially given that it comes on top of the fatigue that is already very much setting in with these firefighters who've been working since last Wednesday. But what really could complicate efforts is the wind, this wind that could come in and act as a fan. And the worry is that new areas that haven't previously burned over the last few days will catch alight. But teams are still motivated. Even if there are over 90 firefighters injured now, there are more than 2,700 out battling this blaze.
Carys, you were telling me before we came on air that earlier you were with people filling up tanks to go and fight the flames themselves.
That's right. So it's really the local community that has jumped into action here, and it's been the case since last Wednesday, since the fire first broke out, whether that's farmers who go themselves to deliver water that they've filled in their tanks to the firefighters in the forest, or whether, as I explained to you earlier, it's locals who are going to fill up their tanks, their equipment that they would normally use from work, from hydrants here, and going themselves into the forest to battle some of the smaller flames. Let's take a listen to what one of those gentlemen said when I spoke to them earlier.
We worked a lot with the Marseille firefighters yesterday. We'd drive in with our 4x4s, head into the plots. That would allow us, when we saw bigger fires, to go after them. They'd come with their fire trucks, drive into the woods, put out the big fires, and we'd stay behind afterwards. Then we manage the situation and monitor things. Once it's completely extinguished, we move on. Then we usually come back 2 or 3 hours later to see if it's flaring up again, because it does flare up constantly. It never stops.
So obviously a huge show of solidarity from those locals, but it's also volunteers helping out in other ways, whether that's bringing food to firefighters or supplies to the thousands that were evacuated here.